A stepfather's secret deal. Almost cost a boy his life. Until a German shepherd stepped in. Some secrets don't stay buried forever. In Cedar Ridge, whispers travel faster than the wind through the pines. Everyone knew Caleb Rourke was once a hero, a firefighter who pulled strangers from flames. But war, injury, and whiskey had burned away his glory. What no one knew was how far his debts had dragged him into darkness. For Nora Hart and her 6-year-old son Liam, that truth came crashing in one drunken night. Caleb's words slurred, his eyes hollow. I lost him. I lost the boy in a poker game. Barrett Hale owns the debt. He owns him. Nora's blood ran cold. Councilman Barrett Hale, the man whose name was whispered in connection with missing children, the one whose smile never reached his eyes. And now, her son was his, but fate had other plans. Just when it seemed the trap had closed, a shepherd with a scarred ear and the steadiness of an old soldier appeared. His name was Kaiser, and his loyalty was not for sale. What followed was a night of flight, betrayal, and revelation, a journey that would uncover not only secrets of the town, but the blood-deep truth of Liam's family. The neon sign of Marla's diner flickered weakly against the fading sky, its glow reflected in the puddles left behind by a brief summer storm. For a moment, the roadside cafe was almost peaceful. Inside, the jukebox hummed a tune too faint to drown out the clink of silverware. At a corner booth by the window, Nora Hart leaned forward, brushing a stray lock of hair from her 6-year-old son's forehead. You finished, sweetheart? She asked softly. Liam nodded, his small fingers still curled around the half-empty glass of chocolate milk. His eyes were wide and too serious for a boy his age. Nora reached across, squeezing his hand, trying to mask the tension running like a wire beneath her skin. She had brought him here for a moment of normalcy, just fries, milkshakes, and the quiet rhythm of a diner on the edge of nowhere. For 10 fleeting minutes, she could almost pretend life was simple. Then the roar came. Engines thundered across the highway, tearing through the evening stillness like a war cry. Nora froze, glass slipping in her grip. Liam flinched at the sound, instinctively pressing closer to her side. Through the streaked window, she saw them. 5 motorcycles, chrome glinting under the last shards of daylight, barreling into the lot with predatory grace. Their leather jackets bore the emblem she had prayed never to see again, a rusted iron pike piercing through a skull. The Iron Pike Riders. The leader killed his engine first. He was enormous, shoulders straining his jacket, his face a grotesque map of scars that twisted when he sneered. Locals called him Scarface Briggs, and even from behind glass, his presence seemed to sour the air. One by one the others followed his cue, the sudden silence of their idling engines more menacing than the roar had been. "Mom," Liam whispered, his voice a trembling thread. "Stay close," Nora said, sliding out of the booth. Her heart was pounding hard enough to hurt. She had known coming back to Cedar Ridge was dangerous, but she hadn't expected them to find her this fast. By the time she pushed open the diner's door, they were already fanned out across the parking lot, a wall of leather and steel. Briggs stepped forward, boots crunching gravel. His eyes, cold and pitiless, locked on her. "You shouldn't have come back," he growled, his voice carrying across the lot like the strike of a hammer. Nora swallowed hard, pulling Liam behind her. "We're just passing through. We don't want any trouble." Briggs laughed, a sound without humor. "Trouble's not up to you." He flicked his chin, and 2 bikers stepped closer. One reached out and shoved Nora. She stumbled back, hitting the asphalt with a gasp, her knees scraping open. "Mom!" Liam screamed, darting forward, only to be snatched up by another biker. The man's gloved hand wrapped around Liam's arm, jerking him off balance. The boy kicked and thrashed, but the biker just laughed, hauling him into the air like he weighed nothing. "Let him go!" Nora cried, scrambling to her feet, blood running down her leg. She lunged forward, but Briggs caught her shoulder and shoved her back down again. "Don't make it worse for yourself," he said coldly. "Orders are orders. Hale wants the kid." The name froze her blood. Hale. So it was true. Before she could scream, before she could claw her way toward her son, the night split open with a sound so primal it seemed to come from the earth itself. A growl, deep, resonant, menacing. From the shadows near the dumpster behind the diner, something moved. Fast, powerful, unstoppable. A blur of black and tan fur burst into the lot, eyes burning gold under the flickering neon. Kaiser, the German shepherd in a black tactical vest emblazoned with police dog, launched himself straight at the man holding Liam. The biker barely had time to curse before Kaiser's jaws clamped down on his forearm. The crunch of teeth meeting bone was followed by a howl of agony. Liam tumbled free, hitting the ground with a cry, and scrambled toward his mother. Nora caught him, pulling him into her arms as chaos erupted around them. The parking lot exploded into violence. One biker swung a chain, another pulled a knife. Kaiser darted, lunged, and snapped with lethal precision. His body was a storm of muscle and fury, trained instincts taking over as he drove the men back one by one. The chain whistled through the air, missing by inches. The knife slashed, only to be met with a flash of teeth and a spray of blood. "Get the damn dog!" Briggs roared, his voice breaking through the confusion. But Kaiser was everywhere at once, his growls echoing against the metal siding of the diner. He bit, released, and struck again, each attack perfectly timed. The bikers shouted curses, stumbling in panic as their leader tried to rally them. For a moment, the Iron Pike Riders, men who ruled Cedar Ridge through fear, looked like nothing more than startled prey. Nora clutched Liam to her chest, her own heart hammering as she watched the spectacle. For a second, she thought it might be enough, that Kaiser could drive them all away. But Briggs was already moving forward, pulling something from inside his jacket, a pistol. Nora's breath caught in her throat. "Run!" she screamed, grabbing Liam's hand. Kaiser's ears twitched at the command, and though he didn't break his assault, he shifted, snapping at another biker to clear a path. Nora seized the opening. Dragging Liam with her, she sprinted toward the alley beside the diner, gravel biting into her torn knees, lungs burning with fear. Behind them, the lot was a maelstrom of shouts, snarls, and Briggs's enraged bellow. The gunshot came, sharp, deafening, but Nora didn't dare look back. She only knew one thing. Those precious seconds Kaiser had bought with his fury might be the only chance they had to survive. Gravel cut into Nora's palms as she half-dragged, half-carried Liam into the narrow alley behind the diner. Her breath came in ragged bursts, every inhale scraping her throat like glass. The roar of motorcycles and the crack of a gunshot still rang in her ears. She didn't dare glance back, not when one stumble could cost them everything. "Mom, slow down!" Liam gasped, his legs too short to match her frantic pace. She tightened her grip, whispering between breaths, "We can't stop, baby." Not yet. Her eyes darted over the alley. Overflowing trash bins, broken pallets, the sour stench of spilled grease. No place safe, just temporary shadows. Behind them, the chaos hadn't ended. A harsh cry echoed, someone shouting in pain. Another voice cursed, followed by Kaiser's guttural growl. Nora risked a glance over her shoulder. The dog was still there. Through the dim glow spilling from a backdoor bulb, she saw Kaiser's body coiled in motion, fur bristling, muscles taut like drawn steel. He lunged at a biker trying to follow, his jaws clamping down on the man's boot. The biker howled, swinging wildly with a chain. Kaiser twisted, pulling him off balance, forcing him to crash hard into the wall with a sickening thud. "God help us," Nora whispered, clutching Liam tighter. She had no idea why the dog was here, or why he wore a police vest. But in this moment, he was the only thing keeping them alive. She stumbled behind a row of dumpsters, crouching low. Liam trembled in her arms, his breath hitching with every sound from the lot. Nora smoothed his hair, guilt pressing heavy on her chest. "You should have left Cedar Ridge when you had the chance. You should have known they'd find you." Kaiser's paws slapped against the pavement a moment later. He burst into the alley, panting hard, blood flecking his muzzle. He skidded to a stop in front of them, body angled protectively, his growls vibrating in his chest like distant thunder. For an instant, his eyes met Nora's, amber, sharp, unreadable, and she realized he wasn't just fighting for them. He was already guarding them, as if some silent vow had bound him. Bootsteps echoed from the lot. Shadows loomed at the mouth of the alley. One biker's voice carried clear. Orders were to bring the boy back, alive. "Don't botch it." Another snarled, "Hale ain't patient. If we screw this up, we're all dead." The name sliced through Nora like a knife of Barrett Hale. She'd hoped against all reason that Caleb's drunken confession had been the rambling of a ruined man. But now, confirmation. Hale wanted her son. He had sent these men. Kaiser stepped forward, shoulders low, lips curled back to reveal long, wet teeth. The bikers hesitated, their swagger faltering when faced with the beast in their path. One cursed, spat to the side. "Not worth it tonight. We'll get the kid later." Hale's orders stand. She can't run forever. Boots scraped against gravel. Engines roared to life again, fading into the night like a storm passing, but not gone. Never gone. Nora stayed frozen, barely daring to breathe, until the sound of motorcycles dwindled into the distance. Silence fell, broken only by the pounding of her heart. She glanced at Liam, expecting him to cry, but instead he reached out a trembling hand toward the dog. Kaiser sniffed his small fingers, then leaned forward, licking them with a slow swipe of his tongue. Liam let out a shuddering breath, half laugh, half sob. "Good boy. You saved us." The words seemed to bind them together. Nora felt the knot in her chest tighten and loosen all at once. For months, her son had been retreating further into silence, his innocence chipped away by Caleb's rages and the shadows hanging over their lives. Now, in the alley behind a diner, in the presence of a dog they didn't know, Liam had spoken words that carried more than gratitude. They carried trust. Kaiser's ears flicked at the sound, as if acknowledging the boy's voice. Then he settled at their side, body pressed against Liam's knee. A silent guardian. Nora's eyes burned. She wanted to weep, to collapse, to let it all out. But there was no time. She kissed Liam's hair, forcing herself to speak steady. "We need to move. The longer we stay, the easier it is for them to find us." "But Kaiser will come, right?" Liam whispered. The dog's head lifted at his name, sharp eyes scanning the alley before returning to the boy. Nora hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. He'll come." She prayed she wasn't lying. Together, they rose. Nora's legs were shaking, but determination drove her forward. Liam clung to her hand with one, to Kaiser's thick fur with the other. The three of them, mother, son, and the scarred shepherd, slipped deeper into the maze of alleys. Behind them, Marla's diner stood silent again, but its shadows had birthed a truth Nora could no longer deny. Hale was coming for her boy, and tonight was only the beginning. The walk back to their apartment felt longer than it was. Nora carried Liam up the cracked stairwell of the aging building, every creak of the steps threatening to betray her trembling legs. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting headlights to flare or motorcycle engines to roar again. But the night was still, too still, as if holding its breath. Their apartment sat at the end of the hallway, a battered door with peeling paint and a lock that had been jimmied more than once. Nora fumbled with the key, her hands shaking. Inside, the small living room was dim and stale, curtains drawn tight, the faint smell of smoke and whiskey lingering in the air. She set Liam down gently on the couch. His cheeks were pale, streaked with grime and fear, but his hand never left the thick fur of the shepherd who had followed them home. Kaiser lay at his feet now, silent but alert, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Nora stared at him for a moment. The vest he wore, black canvas with police dog stitched in white, gleamed faintly in the lamplight. "Why are you here?" she whispered under her breath, as though the animal could answer. Liam stroked the dog's ears, whispering to him instead, "Don't leave us, okay?" The words pierced her heart more deeply than she wanted to admit. She reached for a damp cloth, wiping blood from her son's scraped knees, trying to hold herself together. The front door rattled suddenly. Nora froze. For an instant her stomach lurched with terror. Had the bikers followed them? But then came the fumbling jangle of keys, the uneven slam of boots against the floor. Caleb Rourke. He stumbled inside, his firefighter's jacket hanging crooked over a wrinkled shirt, his hair matted, eyes glazed. The sharp tang of whiskey reached them before he did. "Hey, hey," Caleb slurred, dropping his keys onto the counter. "My family, my people." His voice carried a forced cheer, as though he could charm away the darkness in the room. Liam shrank back against the couch cushions. Nora stiffened, pressing a protective hand against her son's shoulder. Caleb lurched forward, crouching clumsily before the boy. "How's my champ? You're strong, right?" "Just like me." He reached out, patting Liam's cheek too roughly, the motion halfway between affection and possession. "Don't," Nora said sharply. Her tone sliced through the haze, but Caleb only blinked at her, his smile faltering. "What's your problem?" "I'm trying here, Nora. I'm trying to be—" His words tangled, frustration rising like a tide. He slammed his fist against the arm of the couch, making Liam flinch. "You think I don't care? You think I don't love this boy?" His anger broke as quickly as it rose. He dropped heavily onto the couch beside them, burying his face in his hands. I'm sorry. I screw everything up." The apartment filled with the sound of his uneven breathing. Then he looked up, eyes bloodshot, voice hoarse. "Do you know what I did tonight?" Nora stayed silent, dread coiling in her gut. Caleb laughed bitterly. "I lost. Again. Cards, whiskey, the whole damn thing. I thought I could win it back, though maybe tonight would be different." He shook his head, the words spilling faster now, a confession he couldn't hold back. "But the stakes were high. Barrett Hale doesn't play small, and when I couldn't cover it—" He swallowed, then forced the words out. "I put Liam in the pot." The room seemed to tilt. Nora's heart slammed against her ribs. What did you say?" Caleb's gaze wavered, shame flickering across his features. "He said it'd be temporary. Said he just wanted the boy. papers, adoption, all legal. No debts, no more threats. His voice cracked. I lost, fair and square. Hale owns him now. For a long moment, Nora couldn't breathe. The world shrank to the sound of Liam's small, uncomprehending gasp beside her, and the steady thrum of blood rushing in her ears. She stared at Caleb, at the man who had once carried her son on his shoulders during a county fair, who had once sworn he would protect them. You sold him, she whispered, voice raw. You sold my son. Caleb reached out, desperate, his hand trembling. Nora, listen. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was drunk. I was stupid. I'll fix it. I'll talk to Hale. She shoved his hand away. Fury lit her veins like fire. Fix it. There is no fixing this. He's coming for the boy, Caleb. You've given him the excuse he's been waiting for. Liam whimpered, burying his face against Kaiser's neck. The dog shifted, pressing closer, a low rumble vibrating in his chest, as though he understood the storm in the room. Caleb sagged, his face crumpling into something pitiful. I'm sorry, he mumbled again, over and over, but the words rang hollow. Nora stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. We don't have time. If Hale wants him, he'll come. And next time, a dog won't be enough. As if on cue, Kaiser rose suddenly from the floor, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the door. He stepped forward, muscles tense, and scratched once, hard, against the wood. The sound echoed through the small apartment like a warning bell. Nora's breath caught. She looked at the door, then at her son, then back at the dog who stood like a sentinel between them and the world outside. He's already close, she whispered. The scratching came again. And with it, Nora knew. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The apartment had fallen into a fragile silence. Caleb slumped in the armchair, half asleep in a whiskey haze, muttering apologies no one believed. The smell of liquor and ash clung to everything. Nora didn't bother waking him. Her mind was already racing ahead, every nerve in her body screaming one truth. They had to leave tonight. She moved quietly, gathering what little she could. The small backpack from the closet, the one Liam had used for kindergarten, would have to serve as their lifeline now. Into it she folded 2 changes of clothes for him, one for herself. She slipped in a toothbrush, a roll of gauze from the bathroom cabinet, and the survival book Liam loved to read over and over, its pages worn soft by small hands. On the dresser sat a mason jar of coins and crumpled bills Liam had saved from mowing lawns, from recycling cans. She poured it into her palm, counting fast. $39 and some change. It wasn't much, but it was something. She stuffed it deep into the bag. Her hand hesitated at the nightstand. Beneath a loose board lay the scarf fragment, blue and frayed at the edges, the last piece of her mother. She had wrapped Liam in it as a baby, and somehow, despite the fires, the moves, the years of fear, it had survived. She pressed it to her lips, breathing in the faint ghost of memory. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it into the backpack. From the kitchen, she scavenged food, half a loaf of bread, an apple, a nearly empty jar of peanut butter. She wrapped them in wax paper, her movements sharp and efficient. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a gunshot, and she kept glancing at the door, afraid of footsteps in the hall. Behind her, Liam stirred on the couch. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, his hair a dark tangle. "Mom, what are you doing?" His voice was small, cautious. Nora forced a smile, crouching down to him. "We're going on a little trip, sweetheart. Just you and me." His gaze dropped to the backpack, then to her trembling hands. He wasn't fooled. "You're scared." Her throat tightened. She reached for him, brushing her thumb across his cheek. "I just need to keep you safe. That's all that matters." He slid off the couch and padded across the worn carpet. His hand went straight for the scarf fragment she hadn't yet zipped away. He held it tightly against his chest, like a talisman against the dark. "Will he come for me?" Liam asked. The question cut her deeper than any knife. She didn't need to ask who he was. Barrett Hale's shadow loomed over this town like storm clouds that never lifted. She had heard the whispers. Families ruined, children vanishing, debts paid in blood. Men like Briggs and his bikers weren't just thugs. They were Hale's enforcers, his hunting dogs. She crouched to Liam's level, her voice low but steady. "He won't take you. I promise. We're leaving before he can find us." At the sound of a soft thump outside, she froze. Her pulse spiked, but it wasn't the bikers. It was Kaiser. She rose and opened the curtain a fraction. There he was, the German shepherd, sitting in the glow of the street lamp, perfectly still, amber eyes scanning the shadows. The tactical vest caught the light. The words, "police dog," stark against the black fabric. He wasn't wandering. He was waiting. Nora exhaled slowly, almost in disbelief. The dog had followed them here, had stayed close even as Caleb's drunken snores filled the apartment. She didn't know why, whether it was instinct, training, or something more. But she knew with certainty he intended to come with them. She zipped the backpack shut, slung it over her shoulder, then knelt and took Liam's hands. "Listen to me. We can't make any noise. Not one sound. Do you understand?" Liam nodded, clutching the scarf tighter. His eyes flicked to the door, then to the dog outside, and she saw in him the same strange, budding trust she had felt earlier in the alley. She looked back at Caleb one last time. His head lolled against the chair, mouth slack, a man drowned by his own demons. Once, she had believed he might save them. Tonight, he condemned them. Her jaw hardened. She turned away. "Kaiser's waiting," Liam whispered. Nora reached for the doorknob. The shepherd lifted his head as if sensing the decision, rising smoothly to his feet. His tail gave one low sweep across the pavement, acknowledgement, not excitement. A soldier reporting for duty. The night air hit her skin like ice as she opened the door. She drew Liam close, the backpack heavy on her shoulders, her heart heavier still. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle growled, faint but real, a reminder that Hale's men were never far. Nora whispered a prayer she barely believed anymore. Then, with her son's hand in one and the shepherd's shadow at her side, she stepped into the darkness. The clock above the laundromat struck midnight as Nora guided Liam through the back streets of Cedar Ridge. The town was quiet, too quiet, as though it sensed their flight and held its breath. Street lamps buzzed faintly, spilling pale light across cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. Liam leaned heavily against her side, half asleep, his small hand still clutching the blue scarf fragment. Every few steps, his head nodded, before jerking upright again, his body fighting exhaustion. Nora whispered encouragement, her voice low, her grip firm. "Just a little farther, baby. We can't stop yet." Beside them, Kaiser padded silently, his movements precise and deliberate. The German shepherd's ears flicked at every sound, The rustle of a stray cat in an alley, the creak of a loose shutter, the faint hum of tires somewhere in the distance. Once, he gave a short, muffled bark and angled left, steering them away from a corner. Nora obeyed, without question, realizing with a chill that the dog seemed to know these streets better than she did. They passed the old hardware store, its windows plastered with faded posters for town fairs long past. Beyond it stood the barber shop, dark and empty now, though once it had been a gathering place where men argued over football scores and election gossip. Every sight stabbed her with memory, but tonight the familiar had turned foreign. These streets, these buildings, once home, now felt hostile, controlled by unseen eyes. Kaiser paused at an intersection, body low, nose lifted to the night air. He gave a warning growl, soft but certain. Nora froze. Headlights glared faintly at the far end of the block, sweeping across brick walls. A motorcycle? No. The shape was boxier, smoother. A police cruiser rolled slowly past the corner, its engine humming low. Liam stiffened in her grip, eyes wide. "Mom," he whispered, "what if they see us?" Nora pulled him back into the shadows of an alley, pressing her hand gently over his mouth. They crouched behind a stack of discarded crates, the smell of damp cardboard rising around them. The cruiser glided by, its spotlight cutting across the street. Kaiser stayed perfectly still, his body pressed tight against Liam's leg, as though shielding him even from the beam of light. Only when the car disappeared around the bend did Nora let out her breath. She waited until the engine's hum faded into silence, then lowered her hand from her son's mouth. Liam's whisper trembled with fear. "Even the police. They won't help us, will they?" Her heart clenched. She wanted to lie, to tell him the badge still meant something in Cedar Ridge. But she couldn't. Not after years of watching Barrett Hale buy loyalty with cash and threats, weaving his influence into every corner of this town. She remembered whispers about children who vanished, families who left in the dead of night and were never seen again. Files misplaced, calls unanswered, deputies turning their eyes away. "No," she admitted softly. "Not here." She smoothed his hair back, her voice steadier than she felt. "But we're leaving, Liam. We'll find a place where the law still means something. You just have to trust me a little longer." The boy nodded, though his eyes stayed fixed on the direction the cruiser had gone. Kaiser nudged his hand, grounding him. Liam stroked the dog's head, finding comfort in the steady warmth beneath his fingers. They moved on. The back streets wound like a maze, and Nora kept them to the narrowest alleys, where the light rarely reached. They passed the sheriff's office, a squat brick building with barred windows and a flag that sagged limply in the night air. The sight of it made her stomach twist. Once, she might have run there for safety. Now, all she saw was Hale's grip, heavy and unshakable. She imagined his men inside, sipping coffee, laughing at how easily the town bent to their will. Kaiser growled low again, eyes locked on the office door. He knew, she realized with a shiver. He knew where danger lived. They pressed on, crossing a deserted playground where the swing chains rattled faintly in the breeze. Liam slowed, staring at the empty slide, his lip trembling. "I used to play here," he murmured. Nora squeezed his hand tighter. "You'll play again," she promised, though her voice broke around the words. "Somewhere safe." At the far end of the playground, Kaiser suddenly stiffened. His head shot up, ears sharp. A sound drifted through the night, distant but unmistakable, the low, guttural rumble of motorcycle engines. Not many, just one or two, prowling the outskirts like wolves testing the wind. Panic clawed at Nora's throat. She scooped Liam up, ignoring his sleepy protest, and broke into a jog. Her legs burned, but she kept her eyes on Kaiser, who moved with purpose, weaving them deeper into the veins of the town. His silent confidence was all she had to cling to. Finally, the alleys thinned. Ahead lay the faint glow of the train station. The tracks stretched into the night, a promise of escape just within reach. Nora's breath hitched, her chest tight with both fear and relief. They weren't safe yet, not by a long stretch, but with every step she felt the grip of Cedar Ridge loosening, Hale's shadow thinning. And through it all, Kaiser trotted just ahead of them, like a compass pointing the way out of the dark. The sky was just beginning to pale, the horizon bruised with shades of violet and gray, when Nora led Liam up the cracked stone steps of Cedar Ridge Station. The old depot smelled of oil, dust, and damp wood, a place forgotten by time, except for the handful of trains that still rattled through before dawn. Liam clutched her hand tightly, his other arm wrapped around the blue scarf fragment. His eyelids drooped from exhaustion, but adrenaline kept him upright. Kaiser padded close, his vest brushing against Nora's leg. The shepherd moved like a shadow with weight, his head constantly turning, scanning every corner. The waiting hall was nearly empty. A single bench sat under the flickering glow of a lantern. Behind the counter, a thin man in a wrinkled uniform leaned back on a stool, his boots propped on the desk. His eyes narrowed as Nora and Liam approached, and he slowly lowered his feet to the ground. "Not much traffic this early," he said, voice dry. His gaze swept over them, Nora's torn jeans, Liam's dirt-streaked cheeks, the heavy backpack slung across her shoulder. "Where are you headed?" Nora forced a steady tone. "We need a ticket." The man leaned forward, squinting at her. "Where to?" Before Nora could answer, Liam stepped forward, placing his jar of coins and crumpled bills on the counter. His voice, small but determined, broke the silence. "The farthest stop you've got." The attendant's brows rose. He sifted through the coins with deliberate slowness, letting them clink one by one. "Farthest stop, huh?" He looked from the boy to Nora, suspicion sharpening in his eyes. "That'll get you to Ashwood Junction, out past the county line. Not much there, but woods and ghosts." "Are you sure that's where you want to go?" Nora's chest tightened. Ghosts or not, it was away from here. She nodded quickly. "Yes." "Ashwood Junction." The man hesitated, his fingers lingering on the coins. "Are you folks in some kind of trouble?" Nora held his gaze, steady despite the storm inside. "We just need the ticket." Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe pity. But he didn't press further. With a shrug, he tore the stub from his ledger and slid it across the counter. "Platform 2. Train leaves at 20. Nora exhaled slowly, relief and dread twisting together. She gripped the ticket as though it might vanish. "Thank you." She guided Liam toward the platform, Kaiser trotting silently at their side. The old wooden boards groaned underfoot, the air thick with the metallic scent of the rails. They sat on a bench, the chills seeping into their bones. Liam leaned against her shoulder, eyelids fluttering. "Mom," he murmured, "is Ashwood safe?" She kissed his hair, whispering against the dark strands, "Safer than here." A distant whistle pierced the silence, echoing through the valley. Liam stirred, clutching the scarf tighter. The faint tremor of wheels followed, building until the train emerged from the mist, an aging locomotive pulling a line of weary carriages. Its brakes screeched as it slowed, sparks dancing in the dawn gloom. Nora rose, tugging Liam gently to his feet. "Stay close." They moved with a handful of passengers, farmers, a pair of traveling salesmen, a weary woman clutching a carpet bag. The conductor gave them a quick glance, tearing their stub without comment. Nora hurried Liam into the last carriage, the least crowded, the wooden seats worn smooth by decades of travelers. As they slid into a corner, Kaiser disappeared from sight. Panic flared in Nora's chest until a moment later, the rear door creaked open. The shepherd slipped inside, silent as smoke, and padded down the aisle. Passengers muttered, casting uneasy glances, but the conductor only frowned. Nora held her breath, bracing for a reprimand. Instead, the man muttered, "Big dog," and moved on. Relief flooded her. Kaiser settled on the floor by Liam's feet, his body curling protectively around the boy. Liam stroked his fur, whispering, "You made it." The whistle blew again. With a lurch, the train began to move. Nora pressed her hand against the window pane, watching as Cedar Ridge rolled slowly backward, its rusted rooftops, its crooked streets, its shadows. Liam lifted his face to the glass. His breath fogged the window as he whispered, "Goodbye." His tone carried no triumph, only a strange mix of terror and something softer. Relief, maybe, or the fragile hope that they had outrun the nightmare, if only for a while. Nora slid her arm around him, drawing him close. "We're free now," she said, though the words trembled in her throat. She knew the truth. Freedom was still a long way off. Hale's reach stretched farther than Cedar Ridge, and they had only bought themselves time. But as the train picked up speed, carrying them into the grey wash of dawn, she clung to the sound of the wheels on the tracks, the steady rhythm that promised movement, forward, away, towards something new. Kaiser's head rested on Liam's lap, his amber eyes half closed, but still alert. The boy's small fingers curled into the shepherd's fur, as though anchoring himself to the one constant in this uncertain world. And for the first time in months, Nora allowed herself to believe they might just make it. The train screeched as it slowed, wheels grinding against rusted tracks. Liam stirred awake, his head heavy against Nora's arm. Kaiser shifted from his spot beneath the bench, lifting his head, ears pricked. The whistle gave one final mournful cry before the locomotive shuddered to a stop at Ashwood Junction. The station was little more than a weathered platform tucked between thick pines and the hint of a road that seemed to lead nowhere. No bustling crowd, no vendors calling out, only a single lantern swaying in the early dawn breeze and a faded wooden sign that read, "Ashwood Junction." Nora guided Liam down the steps. His small sneakers hit the wooden planks with a hollow thud. He blinked against the pale morning light, clutching the scarf fragment tight in his hand. Behind them, the conductor muttered something to a farmer, but otherwise no one paid them notice. As soon as Liam's eyes settled on the sign, something shifted in his expression. His brow furrowed, lips parting. "Ashwood," he whispered, almost to himself. Nora crouched to meet his gaze. "What is it, sweetheart?" He hesitated, struggling to put it into words. I think I've been here before." In a dream. His eyes darted to the dense forest beyond the platform. There were trees, pines, a house with green shutters. "I remember it, Mom. I swear I do." Nora's throat tightened. He was only 6. His dreams were all he had left of the past. Fragments half-remembered, blurred by fear and loss. Yet there was conviction in his tone, as if something inside him recognized this place. Before she could answer, Kaiser stepped forward, nose lifted to the air. his entire body tensed with alertness. Without waiting for command, the German shepherd padded down the edge of the platform and toward the shadowed tree line. He glanced back once, amber eyes sharp, as though saying, "Follow me." Nora took Liam's hand, the other clutching the backpack strap tight. "Stay close," she whispered. Together they stepped off the platform and into the dirt path that cut between the towering trees. The forest swallowed them quickly. Pines rose like ancient sentinels, their branches knitting overhead to filter the rising sun into shafts of pale gold. The air here was different, cooler, sharper, carrying the scent of earth and resin. Every footstep crunched on needles scattered thick across the ground. Liam squeezed her hand, his eyes darting around. "It's the same," he said softly. "Just like in the dream. The trees, the smell." His voice trailed, wonder mingling with fear. Kaiser moved ahead with certainty, nose close to the ground. His tail swayed low, steady, his body language calm yet deliberate. He wasn't wandering. He was guiding. Nora's thoughts raced as she followed. She had heard the rumors, whispered like warnings in Cedar Ridge, that Barrett Hale's reach extended even beyond county lines, that he had eyes in every small town. But Ashwood felt different. The silence here wasn't menacing. It was expectant, as though the forest itself was watching their steps. She glanced down at her son. His small face was pale, smudged with dirt, yet his eyes held something new, a flicker of hope. The scarf fragment peeked from his fist, fluttering as he walked, a talisman against everything chasing them. Her mind drifted back to the stories she'd overheard at the diner when she first returned to town. Whispers of missing children, families erased without a trace. They had all pointed to Hale, but no one dared speak his name above a murmur. She tightened her grip on Liam's hand, her fear hardening into resolve. "We'll be okay," she told him, though her voice barely rose above the wind. "We just have to keep moving." They passed a creek, its waters silver in the morning light, burbling over smooth stones. Liam knelt, cupping water in his hands, his reflection rippling across the surface. He glanced back at Nora. "It feels safe here." For a moment, she allowed herself to believe it. Kaiser barked once, short, sharp, not alarmed but commanding attention. He had stopped at a bend in the path, waiting for them. His stance was strong, his gaze fixed deeper into the woods. Nora gathered Liam close, the weight of the backpack digging into her shoulders. Together, they stepped into the shadows where the forest thickened, the last glimpse of Ashwood Junction fading behind them. And though the train station receded into silence, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that something larger had begun the moment they set foot on that platform. The boy's dream, the shepherd's certainty, the forest's watchful hush. It wasn't just an escape anymore. It was a path into something long buried, waiting to be found. The forest grew denser as they pressed on, the path narrowing to a thread between towering pines. Sunlight filtered in broken shafts, painting the earth in shifting mosaics. Every sound felt amplified. The crunch of their steps on pine needles, the flutter of wings overhead, the snap of twigs in the underbrush. Liam clung to Nora's hand, his scarf fragment trailing against his leg. His breaths came quick and shallow, though he tried to hide it. Kaiser moved several paces ahead, his head low, tail stiff, the picture of vigilance. It was Kaiser who sensed her first. His ears flicked sharply, his body pivoting with a sudden growl. Nora froze, tightening her grip on Liam. From the bend in the path, a figure emerged. At first glance, she looked like part of the forest itself, small and bent, wrapped in a patched shawl the color of lichen. A walking stick supported her frail frame, yet her movements were deliberate, not hesitant. Her silver hair was tied into a tight bun, and her eyes, sharp, penetrating, caught the morning light with unsettling clarity. "Travelers," she said, her voice roughened by age but steady. "Not many come through Ashwood's woods at this hour." Nora stepped instinctively in front of Liam. "We're just passing through." The old woman tilted her head, studying them. Her gaze lingered on Kaiser, who stood rigid, lips parted to reveal a glimpse of teeth. Instead of fear, her mouth curved into a knowing smile. "A fine guardian you've found. Or perhaps he found you." She reached into the basket slung across her arm and withdrew a parcel wrapped in brown paper. With slow, deliberate steps, she extended it toward Liam. "Bread, cheese. You look hungry." Liam's eyes darted to Nora's, silently asking. Nora hesitated, every instinct screaming caution. Yet there was no malice in the woman's face, only a kind of stern curiosity, and the smell that wafted from the parcel, fresh, tangy cheese and crusty bread, made Liam's stomach twist with longing. "Go on," Nora whispered. Liam stepped forward cautiously. Kaiser growled low, but when the old woman crouched to his level and extended the food, the dog only sniffed once before settling back, as though granting permission. Liam accepted the bundle, unwrapping it with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he murmured. The woman straightened, leaning on her stick. Her eyes, still sharp, flicked between mother and son. "At the fork ahead," she said, "take the right path. The left leads only to ruin." Nora frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "These woods are old. They remember. Not every path is meant for the living to walk." Her words sent a shiver racing down Nora's spine. She pressed Liam closer, trying to read the woman's face. "Why warn us?" The old woman tapped her stick against the ground, her gaze distant now, as if peering past them into the weight of years. "Because I've seen too many wanderers mistake the left for the right, and I know what lies waiting." Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to echo in the hush of the forest. "Remember this. Not everything lost wants to be found." The words hung heavy in the air, cryptic and unsettling. Liam stiffened, clutching the bread to his chest. His wide eyes darted to Nora, then back to the woman. "What does that mean?" he asked softly. The old woman looked at him with something almost like sorrow. "In time, you'll understand." Before Nora could press further, the woman tapped her stick once more and turned away, her small figure swallowed quickly by the trees. Within moments, she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. The forest returned to silence, but it was a different silence now, charged, expectant. Nora knelt beside Liam. "Eat, sweetheart. You need strength." He took a small bite of bread, chewing slowly, his eyes still fixed on the path where the woman had vanished. "She was strange," he whispered. "Like she knew us." Nora brushed his hair back, masking her unease. Maybe she just saw a tired boy who needed food. But even as she said it, her mind churned. Who was that woman? How had she appeared so suddenly? And how had Kaiser, so wary of strangers, allowed her near? Kaiser padded back to Liam's side, nudging the boy's knee with his nose. Liam smiled faintly, breaking a piece of bread to share with him. The dog accepted it gently, his amber eyes steady on the boy as if to reassure him. Nora rose, glancing down the path ahead. Somewhere in the distance, the forest forked into two trails, right or left. One promised survival, the other ruin, if the old woman's words were to be believed. She gripped Liam's hand, her voice low but firm. "Come on. We keep moving, and we remember what she said." Together, they pressed deeper into the woods, Kaiser leading once more, the bread and cheese in Liam's pack, and the weight of a stranger's warning heavy on their shoulders. The forest deepened as afternoon bled into evening, the shafts of golden light shrinking to slivers between the canopy. Nora's breath came ragged, her palms raw and streaked with dirt and blood from scrambling over roots and brambles. She kept Liam close, urging him forward with whispered encouragement, though she could see how heavily his small legs dragged. Liam stumbled once more, dropping to his knees with a soft cry. He tried to push himself up, but his arms trembled from exhaustion. The scarf fragment slipped from his grasp, fluttering onto the pine needles. He snatched it back quickly, clutching it to his chest as if drawing strength from its frayed fabric. "I can't, Mom," he whispered, tears glinting in his eyes. Nora crouched beside him, swallowing her own pain. She cupped his face with shaking hands, her thumbs brushing the dirt from his cheeks. "Yes, you can, Liam. Just a little longer. We have to keep going until we find somewhere safe." Behind them, Kaiser circled restlessly, his ears twitching at every sound in the darkening woods. His presence was a constant anchor, steady, watchful, unyielding. He nudged Liam with his nose, almost urging him to rise. With trembling determination, Liam pushed himself up again. His small hand slipped into Nora's, and together they pressed forward. The forest seemed to close in on them, shadows thickening, sounds sharpening, the snap of branches, the distant cry of an owl. Every noise made Nora's nerves coil tighter. She knew predators roamed these mountains, and though Kaiser was formidable, he was still just one dog against the wild. It happened suddenly. A low, guttural snort echoed from the brush ahead. The air shifted, charged with primal threat. Kaiser froze, his hackles rising like bristling wire, a rumble building deep in his chest. From the shadows lumbered a massive black bear, its dark fur glistening with the sheen of dusk, its eyes small but burning. It moved slowly, deliberately, massive paws crushing the undergrowth with each step. The musky scent of it filled the air, unmistakable, suffocating. Nora yanked Liam behind her, heart pounding so violently she thought her ribs might shatter. "Don't move," she whispered. Her voice cracked with fear. Liam's small fingers dug into her sleeve, his breath quickening in terrified gasps. The bear rose onto its hind legs, towering, a hulking silhouette against the dim sky. Kaiser lunged forward, barking with explosive force. His growls rolled like thunder, his teeth flashing white in the gloom. He darted side to side, feinting forward, never quite closing the distance. His every movement screamed defiance, a bluff of deadly intent meant to convince the predator that he was more than he seemed. The bear huffed, snapping its jaws, testing the shepherd's resolve. For a heartbeat, Nora thought it would charge. Her body tensed, ready to throw herself over Liam no matter how futile. But Kaiser didn't yield. His bark rose, sharp and relentless, his body coiled in fearless aggression. He stamped the ground with his paws, his stance unflinching. The bear hesitated, snorted again, and finally dropped back to all fours. With a disgruntled groan, it turned, lumbering back into the trees, its hulking form fading into shadow. Only when the last echo of its movement vanished did Kaiser relax, though his chest still heaved with the force of his barks. Nora collapsed to her knees, clutching Liam tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks in silent release. "Thank God," she whispered. Liam buried his face into Kaiser's neck, his small arms wrapping tight around the shepherd. His voice, muffled but fierce, broke through his sobs. "Good boy. You saved us." Kaiser licked the boy's cheek, his tongue rough but comforting. Liam didn't flinch. He only held tighter, his trembling gradually easing. For the first time, a spark of courage flickered in his eyes, fragile but real. Nora watched the moment unfold, her heart swelling with both fear and gratitude. She had seen grown men falter before predators, but this boy, her boy, had clung to his dog with faith, not despair. The bond between them was no longer just comfort. It was strength. The forest grew darker still, the last light bleeding from the sky. Crickets began their chorus, and an owl hooted mournfully overhead. Nora knew they couldn't keep moving blind through the woods. They needed shelter, anywhere to last the night. She wiped her palms against her jeans, ignoring the sting of her scrapes, and forced herself to her feet. "We have to find somewhere to rest," she said, steadying her voice for Liam's sake. Kaiser took the lead again, his head low, but his movements purposeful, guiding them deeper into the forest. Nora followed with Liam close against her side. The boy's steps steadier now, his hand still gripping the scarf, but his gaze lifted from the ground. They moved slowly, cautiously, searching for signs of safety. An outcrop of rocks, an abandoned structure, anything. Ere the night pressed heavier with each passing minute, but Kaiser's presence ahead was a beacon. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled faintly. The scent of pine grew sharper, mingling with damp earth. Liam's breathing slowed into a rhythm beside her. Exhausted, yes, but not broken. As the last traces of twilight disappeared, they stumbled upon a clearing, its edges ringed with thick brush. Beyond it loomed the faint outline of a cabin, its roof sagging but intact, windows shuttered, door hanging crooked but closed. Relief surged through Nora's veins like fire. She tightened her grip on Liam's hand and whispered, "There. We'll be safe there." And with Kaiser standing guard at the front, the three of them stepped toward the promise of shelter, leaving the haunted path of the bear behind. The clearing stretched before them, silvered by moonlight that slipped through the canopy. At its center hunched the cabin, its wooden walls dark with age, roof bowed under years of storms. Moss crept along the shingles, and vines clawed their way up the porch posts. It looked less like a home, and more like something the forest had nearly claimed for itself. Nora felt Liam tense beside her. His small fingers tightened around hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's scary." She crouched to meet his eyes, brushing a stray lock of hair from his damp forehead. "It's not scary, baby. It's a shelter. That's what matters." Kaiser had already padded up the creaking steps, his nose pressed to the door. He pawed once, then twice, before glancing back at them, tail stiff but wagging faintly. The dog's instincts had carried them this far. If he said it was safe, Nora had no reason to argue. With a steadying breath, she pushed the door. It groaned open on rusted hinges, releasing a stale gust of air tinged with dust, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Nora's throat tightened, but she forced herself forward. Inside, the cabin was a single large room, with two side doors leading to what might have been a bedroom and a pantry. A stone fireplace loomed against the far wall, its grate blackened by soot long cold. Cobwebs stretched across the corners like forgotten curtains, and dust lay thick over everything. Chairs, a splintered table, even the bare mattress sagging in the bedroom doorway. It wasn't much, but it had walls and a roof, and for tonight, that was enough. "Stay here," Nora whispered, guiding Liam just inside the threshold. "Don't move until I check." She stepped cautiously across the warped floorboards, her flashlight beam cutting through dust motes. Every creak made her heart lurch, but nothing stirred. No animals nesting, no signs of fresh human presence. In the pantry, only empty shelves. In the bedroom, only the sagging mattress. She returned to the main room, her pulse beginning to steady. "All clear," she said softly. Liam sagged with relief. He set the scarf fragment gently on the table, as though even that deserved a place to rest. His eyes roamed the room warily. "Can we stay here tonight?" "Yes." Nora's voice was firm, final. "Tonight, this is ours." Kaiser circled the perimeter of the room, sniffing every corner, his claws clicking against the wood. Satisfied, he settled by the cold hearth, his great body stretched in a protective arc. His amber eyes gleamed in the dim light, watchful even in rest. Nora found a relatively clean blanket stuffed into a trunk and shook it out, ignoring the cloud of dust that billowed into the air. She spread it on the mattress, then guided Liam onto it. He curled into the blanket immediately, exhaustion overwhelming his fear. But even half asleep, he reached for Kaiser. The shepherd rose, padded over, and lowered himself beside the boy. Liam pressed against his warm fur, sighing with something close to peace. Nora sat at the edge of the mattress, her hands trembling as she rubbed the dirt and blood from her palms. The silence pressed in. No bikers, no roaring engines, no whispers of Hale's men. Just the sigh of the forest through cracks in the walls, the occasional hoot of an owl. She bowed her head, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken in years, not elaborate ones, just fragments. "Please keep him safe. Please let tomorrow come. Please give me the strength not to fail him." Her eyes burned, but she didn't let the tears fall. She couldn't afford to. Liam needed her steady, not breaking. The boy's breathing deepened, slow and even, his hand still buried in Kaiser's fur. The dog did not stir, only shifted slightly to drape a paw over Liam's leg, a silent vow of protection. Nora rose and crossed to the fireplace. She found a few dry twigs in a basket and managed to coax a small flame to life. The fire crackled softly, filling the cabin with a faint warmth and the scent of burning pine. She sat before it, staring into the flames, listening to the rhythm of Liam's breaths and Kaiser's low rumble of a sigh. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt the smallest thread of safety weaving through her fear. It wouldn't last. She knew that. Hale's shadow stretched long, and his men would be searching. But tonight, in this forgotten cabin, she and her son had a reprieve. Nora let her eyes drift shut, her final thought a quiet plea. Let this night hold. Let us see the dawn. The fire had burned down to a faint glow, the embers pulsing like tired hearts in the hearth. The cabin was silent, except for the occasional groan of wood settling in its frame and the soft sighs of wind through the cracks. Nora sat propped against the wall, her back aching, her eyes fixed on the flickering light. She had promised herself she would stay awake, keep watch through the night, but exhaustion pressed hard against her skull. On the mattress, Liam lay curled against Kaiser, the boy's hand buried deep in the shepherd's coat. His breaths were uneven, caught between rest and the tremors of dreams. And then he began to stir. Liam's eyelids fluttered, his lips moving soundlessly. His small fingers clutched at Kaiser's fur as though holding fast to something slipping away. The dream had taken him. He was standing in a wide yard, the air sweet with apple blossoms. Before him rose a house with green shutters, the paint sun-faded but alive with memory. The porch stretched wide, the kind of place where a family gathered on summer evenings. And from inside drifted a woman's voice, warm, lilting, singing a tune he half recognized, a melody that wrapped around him like the scarf he carried. "Mom?" His dream voice was soft, uncertain. A shadow bounded across the grass toward him. Not Kaiser, smaller, younger. A pup with the same dark saddle of fur, ears too big for his head, eyes bright as amber. The puppy leapt at him, tongue out, knocking him back into laughter he couldn't control. Liam rolled in the grass, the pup nipping at his sleeves, playful and insistent. The woman's song grew louder, closer. He turned, straining to see her through the sunlight streaming from the doorway. For a heartbeat, he saw her clearly. A figure with hair dark like his, her face alight with love. She held out her arms to him. And then the dream broke. The blue sky thickened into black smoke. The house's windows glowed orange. Screams tore the air. The puppy yelped, vanishing into flame. Liam's chest filled with fire and ash, his legs heavy as he tried to run toward the woman. But she was gone. The doorway swallowed an inferno. He jolted awake with a cry. Tears streaked his cheeks as he gasped, clutching Kaiser desperately. "Mom! Mom! Don't go!" Nora was at his side in an instant, pulling him into her arms. His small body trembled against her chest, his sobs muffled in the fabric of her shirt. She rocked him gently, whispering, "It's all right, baby. You're safe. It was only a dream." But Liam shook his head fiercely. "It wasn't just a dream," he choked out. I saw the house, the green shutters, and her. She was singing." Nora's throat closed. She smoothed his hair, though her own hands shook. "Dreams play tricks, sweetheart. They mix things up." "No," Liam whispered. His voice was raw, insistent. "It felt real. Like I've been there before." His tears dampened her shirt, hot with conviction. And then the fire came. It took her away. Nora pressed her lips to his hair, swallowing the ache in her chest. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it was just his imagination. But the images struck too close, shadows she herself had buried deep, because she too remembered the fire. Not in dreams, but in flashes that woke her at night. Walls collapsing in flame, screams ripping through smoke, the taste of ash on her tongue. She had carried Liam through the blaze, his cries piercing the roar. Somewhere behind her, a woman's voice had shouted her name before vanishing forever. Nora closed her eyes, forcing the memories back into the cage where she kept them. She couldn't let them show. Not now. Liam needed her steady, not breaking apart. She kissed his temple and whispered, "You're here now. That's what matters." Kaiser lifted his head, pressing his nose against Liam's cheek. The boy loosened his grip on Nora, and buried his face in the shepherd's fur instead. "He was in my dream too," Liam murmured. His voice was quieter now, fading with exhaustion. "Not Kaiser, a puppy, but like him." Nora stroked his back slowly. "Maybe that's how you know you're safe. He's been with you in more ways than you think." The boy's breathing evened, the tension ebbing from his body. His hand stayed curled in Kaiser's coat as he drifted back into slumber. The shepherd rested his head across Liam's chest, a silent sentinel. Nora sat there in the half-light, her arms empty now, but her heart unbearably full. She stared into the dying embers, the glow casting shadows across the cabin walls. Her son's dreams were circling closer to truths she had never dared tell him. Truths that tied them to this land, to Hale, to everything she had tried to outrun. And as much as she wanted to dismiss the dream as fantasy, she couldn't shake the chill of Liam's words. The fire took her away. Because some nights, in her own haunted sleep, she still heard that voice, her sister's voice, calling out from the flames. The first grey light of morning seeped through the cracks in the shutters, painting thin bars of pale silver across the dusty cabin floor. Nora stirred from where she had dozed against the wall, her body stiff, her head heavy. Kaiser was already awake, ears flicking, nostrils twitching at the scents drifting in with the dawn. For a blessed moment, there was only silence. Liam curled in sleep, his fist still tangled in Kaiser's fur, the boy's face slack with the innocence of dreams. Nora allowed herself a deep breath, the kind that tasted almost like peace. Then came the sound, a single deliberate knock at the cabin door. Nora's eyes flew open. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She reached instinctively for Liam, pulling him close. Kaiser rose in an instant, his body stiff, a growl vibrating low in his chest. The knock came again, calm, patient, not the pounding of bikers or enforcers, but it was enough to send ice racing down Nora's spine. She whispered sharply, "Stay behind me." Her mind raced. No one should know they were here. Unless... She crept to the door, keeping her body between Liam and the sound. Her hand hovered over the latch when a voice, soft but clear, carried through the wood. "I'm not here to hurt you. Please. My name is Elise Hart. I think I'm your sister." The words froze Nora where she stood. Sister. The name felt like a ghost rising from the ashes of memory. She glanced back at Liam, whose wide eyes searched hers for answers she didn't have. Before she could speak, Kaiser broke the tension. His growl softened into a whine. Then his tail began to thump against the floor. He padded forward, pressing his nose to the crack of the door, tail wagging furiously. Nora's throat tightened. Kaiser had been mistrustful of every stranger they'd crossed paths with. But this was recognition. Her hands shook as she unlatched the door. It opened to reveal a young woman standing on the porch, framed by the morning light. She looked to be in her late 20s, her dark hair braided back, her face pale with nerves yet alight with something desperate and hopeful. Her eyes, sharp, familiar, searched Nora's with the intensity of someone staring at a reflection long lost. For a moment, neither moved. Then the woman whispered, "Nora, my God, it really is you." Nora's lips parted, but no sound came. Her mind reeled, memory and disbelief colliding. Liam stepped forward, peering around her legs. Elise's gaze dropped to him, and she froze, her face drained of color, her voice breaking. "Liam." The boy blinked at her, confused. "How do you know my name?" Elise's hands trembled as she reached into the satchel slung over her shoulder. She withdrew a worn photograph, edges frayed from years of handling. With reverence, she held it out. Nora took it with unsteady fingers. Her breath caught. The picture showed a porch, the one with green shutters Liam had described. Standing there was a tall man with kind eyes and a strong jaw, Michael Hart, their father. Beside him, a smiling young woman who could only be Elise, her arm draped protectively around a teenage Nora. And in Nora's arms, barely a toddler, was Liam, his cheeks round, his hair falling across his forehead in the same way it did now. Nora's knees buckled. She clutched the photograph to her chest, her eyes stinging. The past she had buried under fear and survival came rushing back in a flood of memory. Elise's voice was thick with tears. "You disappeared after the fire. We thought you were gone. We thought Liam had died with you." Her gaze swept over them, disbelief and relief mingling in her expression. "All these years, and here you are." Liam looked between them, his brow furrowed. "Mom, who is she?" Nora sank to her knees, pulling him close. Her voice was hoarse, shaking with the weight of truth. She's your aunt, sweetheart." "She's family." The boy's eyes widened, his grip tightening on the scarf fragment. He glanced at Elise, uncertain, then back to Nora. "Family? Like, really?" Nora nodded, her tears finally spilling. "Yes, like really." Elise stepped into the cabin at last, her hand brushing against Kaiser's head as he leaned against her leg with unmistakable familiarity. She knelt before Liam, her smile trembling but full of awe. "You look so much like him," she whispered. "Like Dad." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small locket. Inside was a photo of Michael Hart holding a baby, his eyes shining with pride. Elise pressed it into Liam's palm. "This belongs to you." The boy stared at it, silent, as if the world had tilted beneath his feet. Nora wrapped an arm around him, her gaze locked on Elise. "If what you're saying is true, if we are who you say we are," she swallowed hard, the realization clawing at her chest, "then we're not just survivors. We're the Mason, no, the Hart family." Elise's answering nod was solemn, her eyes glistening. "The family thought they were dead, but alive, and that means Hale hasn't won yet." The cabin seemed to tremble with the weight of the revelation. For the first time in years, Nora felt the faint stirrings of something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The truck jolted violently as Caleb slammed it into gear, gravel spitting like shrapnel behind the spinning tires. Nora braced herself against the dashboard, one arm instinctively flung across Liam's chest. The boy clutched the scarf fragment in both fists, his small body trembling as Kaiser pressed his weight into him from the truck bed, the shepherd's stance rigid, ears flattened against the rushing wind. The black SUV surged after them, headlights cutting sharp beams through the trees, and the bikers swarmed around its flanks like hungry jackals. Engines roared, reverberating through the narrow forest track until the ground itself seemed to tremble. "Faster!" Elise cried, her voice cracking. Her white-knuckled grip clutched the satchel tight against her chest, as though the deeds inside were the only thing tethering them to hope. Caleb's bloodshot eyes flicked to the mirror, his jaw grinding. "This is as fast as she goes, without rattling apart," he muttered, wrenching the wheel to the left. The truck lurched, skidding around a bend that tore branches against its sides in a screech of metal and wood. A biker veered up alongside them, his face half hidden behind a bandana, rifle strapped across his back. He grinned, tapping the window with a gloved hand before revving forward to cut them off. "Duck!" Caleb barked. He jerked the wheel hard, clipping the biker's rear tire. The man screamed as his bike fishtailed, slammed into a tree, and vanished in a bloom of sparks and smoke. Liam cried out, covering his ears, but Nora only pressed him closer, her heart beat a hammer against her ribs. The SUV surged closer, the driver steady, patient, relentless. From the rear window, a muzzle appeared. A gunshot cracked, shattering the passenger side mirror in an explosion of glass. "Down!" Nora shouted, shoving Liam low. Elise threw her body across him as shards rained onto the floorboards. Kaiser's snarl split the air, a guttural, primal sound that seemed to reverberate from the bones of the truck itself. The shepherd's teeth bared white in the blur of passing trees, his eyes locked on the SUV like a sentinel preparing for war. Another shot rang out. This one punched through the back panel with a hollow thud. Kaiser whirled, crouching low, hackles bristling. He pressed against the cab as if his body alone could shield the family inside. "Hold tight," Caleb growled. He veered suddenly onto a narrow deer path, the truck bouncing violently as it tore over roots and rocks. Branches clawed at the windshield like skeletal fingers, slapping against the metal roof with each jarring impact. "Are you insane?" Nora shouted, her voice strangled by fear. "Insane what keeps you alive when you've already lost everything," Caleb shot back, his hands tight on the wheel. For a moment, silence filled the cab, save for the roar of the engine and the crash of undergrowth. Nora stole a glance at him, the man who had once betrayed her trust, who had drowned his regrets in whiskey. And yet here he was, standing between them and Hale's fury. His eyes were clearer now, his grip steadier than she remembered. She didn't trust him, not fully. But for the first time, she saw a glimmer of something she hadn't dared hope for: atonement. The bikers were less nimble on the rough path. Two went down in quick succession, tires catching roots, metal screaming as bodies slammed into the earth. One remained, his engine howling as he swerved desperately to keep pace. The SUV, however, was another beast. Its tires gripped the mud, steady as a predator stalking prey. A rifle barrel jutted from the passenger side, smoke blooming as another bullet tore past the truck. This one punched a hole clean through the roof. Liam screamed, burying his face against Elise. "Caleb!" Nora's voice was a raw command now. "You have to lose them." "I'm trying." His knuckles gleamed white, sweat streaking down his temples. "But they're faster, and this road's running out." The trees ahead thinned. Sunlight burst through, revealing the glint of water, a river swollen with spring melt, currents frothing white. The deer path ended at its banks, a sheer drop into the rushing torrent. Nora's heart plummeted. "There's no bridge." Caleb's teeth bared in a grim smile. "Didn't say there was." Before she could answer, he gunned the accelerator. The truck roared, the engine screaming as it hurtled toward the riverbank. "Are you out of your mind?" Elise shrieked, clutching Liam so tightly he gasped. "Hold on to something," Caleb bellowed. The truck launched from the edge with a bone-jarring lurch. For one suspended heartbeat, they were airborne, weightless, the world reduced to the roar of wind and the distant thunder of engines behind them. Liam's cry tore through the cab. Nora's breath locked in her chest. Elise shut her eyes, whispering a prayer. Then, impact. The truck slammed into the far bank with a crunch of metal and earth. The chassis screamed, tires spinning in mud before biting down and lurching them forward. Water sprayed high, drenching the windows, but somehow, miraculously, the truck clung to the bank. Behind them, the SUV skidded to the river's edge, brakes screeching. The bikers weren't so lucky. One plunged into the water, his engine swallowed in an explosion of spray, the other crashing into the SUV's flank. Caleb laughed, wild and hoarse, slamming the wheel straight. "Still think I'm useless?" Nora's throat burned, her breath ragged. She turned, watching through the rear window as Hale himself stepped from the SUV, his immaculate suit flecked with mud, his face twisted into a mask of venomous rage. He raised his hand again in that mocking salute, a promise etched into every gesture. "This isn't over," Nora whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Beside her, Liam lifted his head, cheeks streaked with tears, but eyes sharp. He clutched the scarf tighter, voice steady despite the tremor. "He won't win, Mom. Not while we're together." Kaiser barked once, sharp and resolute, the sound carrying over the rumble of the engine. His eyes gleamed, fierce and certain, as though echoing the boy's words. Caleb tightened his grip on the wheel, jaw set. "Then let's make damn sure of it." The battered pickup roared down the forest road, leaving behind smoke, mud, and Hale's fury. The chase was not over. It had only just begun. But for the first time, they weren't just running. They were fighting. Together. Branches whipped across Liam's face as he stumbled into the trees, the tin box clutched to his chest like a lifeline. His small lungs burned, each breath tearing ragged from his throat. Behind him, the night howled with engines, gunfire, and his mother's voice. The last words he had heard before the forest swallowed her whole. "Run, Liam. Run." He couldn't stop hearing it. Couldn't stop feeling the tremor of her bloodied hands pressing the box into his arms. His legs felt too short, too fragile for the task, but terror drove him faster than he had ever run. Roots clawed at his sneakers, stones bit his soles, yet he didn't falter. Kaiser surged at his side, a streak of muscle and instinct, his amber eyes burning with command. The shepherd bumped his shoulder against Liam's hip when the boy veered off course, nudging him toward safer ground, guiding him with the certainty of something far older than training. Liam clung to the dog's presence like a lifeline. The gunfire faded behind them, swallowed by the press of trees. But still Liam ran, branches cracking beneath his feet, breath puffing in panicked bursts. Tears blurred his vision, streaking hot across his chilled cheeks. At last his legs gave, stumbling against a mossy log. He collapsed to his knees, the tin box clanging against the earth. His chest heaved, throat raw. I can't," he gasped. "I can't." Kaiser whirled on him, pressing his muzzle hard against the boy's chest, forcing Liam's trembling hands to steady around the box. Then he barked. Not wild, not panicked, but sharp, deliberate, commanding. The sound rattled through Liam's bones like a slap. "I know," Liam whispered, sobbing. His fingers dug into the shepherd's fur, clutching the warmth. "I know. Mom said, trust you." Kaiser stilled, gaze locked on him, unblinking. Another low whine escaped his throat. Then he turned, nose to the wind, body rigid. Liam followed his eyes, deeper into the forest, where shadows pooled like ink and the faint trickle of water whispered through the night. A stream, a chance to mask their scent. "I'm coming," Liam breathed, forcing his legs beneath him again. He scooped the tin box back into his arms and stumbled after Kaiser. The shepherd moved ahead now, weaving between trees, his paws silent on the forest floor. Liam tried to mimic his quiet, though every snapped twig sounded to him like a thunderclap. They reached the stream minutes later, its water glinting faintly in the starlight. Liam knelt, gulping down handfuls of icy liquid that seared his throat. Kaiser drank quickly too, ears twitching at every sound. Then, without hesitation, the dog splashed into the water and looked back at Liam, as if demanding he follow. The boy hesitated. The water was freezing, the current swift. But then, a distant engine growled through the trees behind them, headlights flaring faintly through the canopy. Hale's men hadn't given up. They were combing the forest. Liam staggered into the stream, gasping as cold bit into his ankles, soaking through his sneakers. Kaiser moved upstream, forcing the boy to follow against the current. Each step numbed his legs, but the shepherd pressed on, tireless. The water churned around Liam's knees, tugging at him, but he clutched the tin box high against his chest and pressed forward. Time blurred into aching steps, icy water, and Kaiser's unyielding shape leading the way. Finally, when Liam thought he could go no further, the shepherd leapt onto the far bank, shaking droplets from his coat. He turned, barking softly, until Liam stumbled up beside him, collapsing into the damp moss. His body trembled violently, teeth chattering. "Kaiser," he whispered. "I'm scared." The shepherd pressed against him, curling his warm body close until Liam could bury his face in the coarse fur. For the first time since fleeing the truck, the boy's sobs broke loose, ragged and unrestrained. He wept into Kaiser's side, clutching fur in one hand and the tin box in the other. "They're gonna hurt her," he choked. "They're gonna hurt Mom." Kaiser didn't answer, of course. But his steady breathing, the rise and fall of his chest, became an anchor. Slowly, Liam's sobs quieted, replaced by the thundering rhythm of his heartbeat. The shepherd licked his cheek once, solemn, before lifting his head. His ears pricked, body tense. Liam froze. Through the trees, faint voices drifted, men calling to one another, their flashlights bobbing like fireflies in the darkness. Hale's men were close. Too close. Kaiser rose silently, nudging Liam's shoulder. The message was clear. "We move." The boy wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, swallowed the last of his sobs, and nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." They crept deeper into the woods, Kaiser leading, Liam stumbling after. The boy's fear hadn't vanished, but something else had taken root beneath it. The echo of his mother's words, the weight of the box in his arms, and the certainty in Kaiser's eyes. As the night stretched on, the two moved as one shadow through the trees, a child clutching his family's legacy, and a shepherd whose loyalty burned brighter than fear. And though the darkness closed around them, the boy no longer felt alone. The forest swallowed the boy's sobs. Each cry broke against the dark like glass, sharp, fleeting, and gone. Liam's small body shook, his arms wrapped around the tin box so tightly that its rusted edges dug into his skin. He didn't notice. His eyes blurred with tears, his throat raw, his chest aching as though it might cave in. Behind him lay Caleb, still, silent, a broken figure, claimed by the soil he would never rise from again. The man had lived a life of mistakes, cruelty, weakness, but in the end, he had stood, bleeding, to shield a boy he had once betrayed. The contradiction sat heavy in Liam's chest, too heavy for a child's heart. Kaiser pressed forward, nudging Liam with his shoulder, growling low in his throat. It wasn't anger. It was insistence, urgency. The shepherd's instincts pulsed like a second heartbeat, telling Liam what words could not. "We must go. Now." The boy wiped his face with a trembling hand. His breath came in shallow gasps, but he nodded, whispering hoarsely, "Okay, I'm coming." The trail north was barely a thread, a deer path winding between thick stands of fir and maple their shadows knitting the night together. Mist drifted low across the ground, seeping from the gorge behind. Every step was uneven, roots twisting like grasping fingers. Liam stumbled often, his legs clumsy, the tin box dragging at his arms. But every time he faltered, Kaiser circled back, bumping him forward, growling softly in his ear. Once, the boy collapsed to his knees, chest heaving. "I can't," he whimpered, burying his face into the shepherd's fur. "I can't do this without her, without him. I just want to stop." Kaiser stood still beneath the boy's tears, letting him clutch, letting him empty the grief onto his shoulders. Then, when Liam's sobs quieted to hiccups, the shepherd licked the boy's cheek once, sharp and deliberate, before pulling away. His gaze fixed north. He barked, firm and commanding. Liam swallowed, wiping his nose on his sleeve. His voice was small but steadier. "You're not going to let me quit, are you?" He staggered upright, clutching the box again. "Okay. Lead the way." The hours stretched thin. Night deepened, swallowing even the moonlight. The forest grew thick, and every rustle of leaves sounded like pursuit. Once, distant engines echoed faintly across the ridges. Liam froze, heart hammering, until Kaiser nudged him into silence and they crouched together beneath the thick roots of a fallen cedar. The boy pressed his ear against the shepherd's chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart, and slowly matched his breathing to it. When the engines faded, they moved again. At last, a faint gray touched the horizon. Dawn seeped into the trees, painting them in pale strokes of silver. The cold gnawed at Liam's bones. His sneakers soaked through, his hands numb. The tin box grew heavier with each mile until it felt like a mountain in his arms. Still, he carried it. Each step forward felt like defiance. Against hail, against fire, against the weight of everything that had tried to erase his family. They reached a ridge as the sun lifted its first true rays. Below stretched a wide valley, mist rising from a river that glimmered faintly in the light. And there, half hidden by trees, stood a weathered sign. Jefferson County Line. Liam's knees buckled at the sight. He sank onto the earth, clutching the box, tears spilling anew. But this time, they weren't only in grief. Relief, fragile and raw, broke through like sunlight after a storm. "We made it," he whispered. His voice cracked, but his eyes shone. "We really made it." Kaiser stood tall at his side, ears perked, nose to the wind. His amber eyes scanned the horizon as if daring danger to follow them further. Then he sat, close enough that the boy could lean into him. Liam pressed his cheek into the shepherd's fur, clutching him tight. "She said, 'Trust you,'" he whispered, "and I do. I'll follow you anywhere." The forest around them sighed with dawn. Birds stirred in the branches. The river roared distantly, eternal and unbothered. For the first time since the firelit chaos, silence felt less like a trap and more like a promise. Still, Liam knew this wasn't the end. Hale's reach was long, and grief was a weight that didn't vanish with sunrise. But he survived. He had Kaiser, and he carried his father's truth in his arms. He lifted the tin box high, sunlight glinting off its rusted lid. His voice was quiet but resolute. "This is ours. They can't take it anymore." Kaiser barked once, sharp, as if sealing the vow. Together, the boy and dog turned toward the valley, stepping into Jefferson County. Not safe, not yet, but alive. And for now, that was enough. The cottage breathed quiet, for no more than a heartbeat. Elise still clutched Rowan's arm, as though he might vanish again if she let go. Liam sat hunched in the chair, the tin box close against his chest. Kaiser pressed like a shadow at his knee. Wilson stood near the window, one hand resting on the butt of his service pistol, his eyes narrowed. Then came the sound, low at first, like distant thunder, then louder. Tires crunching gravel, engines, 2, maybe 3, rolling with deliberate weight through the forest road. The glass panes in the cottage rattled. Rowan stiffened. "They tracked you," Wilson swore under his breath. He dropped the curtain and turned to the others. "Lights out. Now." Elise darted to the lamp on the table, snuffing its flame. The room plunged into shadow, lit only by the pale spill of moonlight through the cracks in the shutters. Kaiser rose to his feet, muscles taut, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His amber eyes fixed on the door. Liam's fingers tangled in his fur, his own body trembling but steady enough to hold the tin box tighter. Headlights slashed across the window slats. A vehicle skidded to a halt outside. Boots struck gravel. Voices followed, hard, confident, carrying the cruel amusement of men who thought themselves inevitable. "Surround it," one barked. The words carried too clearly. "Nobody leaves alive." Elise's face was drained of color. She gripped the knife at her boot. "We can't fight them all." Wilson slid his pistol free, checking the chamber with a click that echoed in the stillness. "We don't have to. We just have to hold it until backup comes." Rowan's jaw tightened. Backup won't come fast enough. His eyes flicked to Liam, then back to Wilson. "Get the boy out the back. I'll hold them here." "No!" Liam's protest cut the air, small but fierce. His knuckles whitened on the tin box. "Don't leave us." Kaiser barked once, sharp and commanding, as if agreeing. Rowan knelt quickly, his storm-gray eyes locking on the boys. "You are the fight now. Do you understand? That box in your arms? It's your father's war carried forward. If Hale's men get it, everything's lost. You don't let go. Not ever." Liam's lip trembled, but he nodded, his chin lifting with a spark of defiance. A crash split the night. The back window shattered inward, shards scattering across the floor. A biker clambered through, leather jacket marked with the Iron Pike's insignia. Kaiser was on him in a heartbeat. The shepherd launched, a blur of muscle and fury, his jaws clamping down on the man's wrist before the pistol could rise. The biker screamed, crashing against the wall as Kaiser drove him back, teeth tearing flesh. "Down!" Wilson barked. He fired once, the sharp crack deafening in the confined room. The biker fell silent. Kaiser released him, blood streaking his muzzle, then whirled back to Liam, growling low as if to say, "Stay behind me." Another crash at the front door, boots kicking against the frame. The old hinges shrieked. Rowan grabbed a fire axe from the wall, his stance broad. His voice was steady, cold. "Let them come." The door burst inward. 2 men charged through, rifles raised. Rowan swung with a roar. The axe blade bit into the first man's shoulder, sending him sprawling with a cry. The second fired wild, bullets chewing into plaster. Elise lunged, her knife flashing, burying it deep in the man's side. He dropped, gasping. The room filled with smoke and the copper tang of blood. Liam pressed his face into Kaiser's fur, trembling but silent. His mother's words rang in his head like a bell. "Trust him. Run when you must." Outside, more voices shouted. Gunfire rattled against the cottage walls, splinters flying. Wilson ducked to the side window, returning fire in sharp, controlled bursts. "They've got us pinned," he growled. "At least 6 more." Elise's chest heaved, her knife slick with blood. She shot Rowan a look, fierce and desperate. "We can't hold on." Rowan's gaze swept the room, landing on Liam. The boy's wide eyes met his, shimmering with fear and determination. Rowan's voice was iron. "Then we buy him time." Kaiser barked, as if echoing the command. Wilson pulled a smoke grenade from his belt, old surplus, dented but intact. He yanked the pin with his teeth, hurled it out the window. A hiss filled the clearing, white plumes rising. Shouts outside turned to coughs and curses. "Now!" Wilson bellowed. He kicked open the back door, firing twice into the smoke. "Move!" Elise grabbed Liam's hand, dragging him toward the exit. Kaiser flanked them, body pressed against the boy, every muscle ready to strike. Rowan covered their retreat, axe slick in his hands, eyes burning with something between fury and absolution. The night exploded around them. Gunfire cracking, smoke choking, shadows darting through the haze. Liam stumbled, but never let go of the box. Kaiser shoved him forward each time he faltered. Behind them, Rowan's roar carried through the smoke. Wilson fired again and again, his pistol barking until the clip ran dry. Elise pulled Liam into the tree line, her breath ragged, the boy gasping against her shoulder. Kaiser stopped once, glancing back, his amber eyes fixed on the chaos, on Rowan's silhouette swinging the axe against the storm. For a heartbeat, the dog hesitated, torn between the fight and the boy. Then Liam's hand pressed against his neck, trembling but sure. "Come on," the boy whispered. "We can't lose you too." Kaiser turned and leapt ahead, clearing the path with snapping jaws and thunderous barks. The forest swallowed them whole. The television screen flickered in the safe house, painting the dim room with stuttering light. Elise sat stiff on the couch, Liam curled against her side, Kaiser's head draped across the boy's lap. Rowan stood by the window, arms folded tight, his silhouette rigid against the blinds. Wilson lingered near the door, radio crackling softly on his belt. On the screen, anchors spoke in urgent tones. Judges, deputies, and businessmen in handcuffs. Headlines scrolled across the bottom. State corruption ring exposed. Hart family evidence ignites indictments. Elise's eyes were wet, but she didn't smile. "We did it," she whispered. Yet her voice carried no triumph. Rowan didn't move from the window. "Not yet." Liam looked up at him, confusion shadowing his young face. "But they arrested them. The news said it's over." Rowan's jaw tightened. The news said Hale's body was never found. The boy's heart stuttered. He looked down at Kaiser, who had stiffened, ears pricked, amber eyes burning with alertness. Liam whispered into his fur, "You feel it too, don't you?" The shepherd gave a low, steady growl, not loud, not frantic, but certain. A warning. Wilson broke the silence, his voice heavy. Divers searched the gorge for 48 hours. Nothing. No body, no clothes, no trace. Elise swallowed hard. "You're saying he's still out there?" "I'm saying men like Hale don't die easily." Rowan turned from the window, his storm-gray eyes sharp. "And if he crawled out of that river, he'll come back with teeth." The room chilled. Liam pulled Kaiser closer, his small fingers clutching thick fur until his knuckles ached. He wanted to believe the worst was over. He wanted to believe his mother's sacrifice and Caleb's last stand had been enough. But deep inside, something whispered otherwise. That night, sleep was thin. Elise lay restless on the cot. Rowan paced the narrow hall, shotgun in hand. Wilson dozed in a chair by the door, one eye open. And Liam, he slept only because Kaiser pressed against him, the dog's heartbeat steady against his cheek. Yet dreams came, dark, heavy dreams. Liam saw fire again, the farmhouse collapsing, the roar of flames eating the sky. He saw the bridge, Hale's pale face rising from the gorge, eyes open and unblinking, lips curling into a smile that did not belong to the living. "You can't kill me, boy." Liam woke with a scream. Kaiser was already on his feet, hackles raised, teeth bared at the door. Elise rushed to the boy's side, cradling him. "Shh, it's all right. It was a dream." But Rowan was already at the window, his breath caught. In the fog outside, headlights burned. A car sat idling at the end of the dirt road. No movement, no sound beyond the low hum of its engine. Its beams cut through the mist, fixed on the cottage like eyes. Rowan whispered through his teeth. "He's here." Wilson stirred, drawing his pistol. "Could be reporters. Could be—" "No," Rowan cut him off. His hand tightened on the shotgun. "That's him." The car lingered for another long moment, engine purring, headlights unblinking. Then, slowly, it backed away into the fog. The night swallowed it whole. Liam clutched Elise, his voice trembling. "It was him. I saw him in my dream." His small hand pressed Kaiser's ear down, whispering, "You saw him too, didn't you?" The shepherd's growl deepened, a sound like stone grinding against stone. He didn't need to answer. Morning came pale and brittle, the mist still clinging to the trees. The Hart family gathered around the kitchen table, exhaustion etched into every face. The tin box sat between them, though its contents were already secured in the Attorney General's office. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was a memory. Rowan leaned forward, his voice hard. "He knows we're alive. He knows what we did. Hale doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he doesn't stop." Elise rubbed her temples. "We've crippled him. His empire's crumbling." "That makes him more dangerous," Rowan said. "A wounded animal fights hardest." Liam listened in silence, his small fingers buried in Kaiser's fur. For the first time, he felt the weight of his family's war pressing onto his shoulders. He thought of Caleb's final words. "Don't look back, son. Live." He thought of Nora's bloodied face, whispering, "Trust Kaiser." He lifted his chin. His voice was small, but steady. "Then we don't stop either. We finish it." Everyone turned to look at him. The boy who had been carried through fire, flood, and gunfire, now sitting straighter than he ever had. Elise's eyes softened with both pride and grief. Rowan's jaw eased, just slightly. Kaiser barked once, sharp, decisive. Wilson adjusted his holster with a grim nod. "Then we hunt him, before he hunts you." The decision settled over the room like iron. Outside, the fog began to lift. But in Liam's heart, the shadow of Barrett Hale loomed darker than ever. Somewhere beyond the ridges, beyond the rivers, Hale was alive, watching, waiting. And the Harts knew. The war wasn't over. It had only changed shape. The first morning, the new farmhouse stood complete. Dew clung to its green shutters, like diamonds catching the sun. The paint was fresh, the wood sturdy, and yet there was something older in its frame. Something carried from ashes into life again. It rose from the blackened foundation where fire had once devoured everything, standing not just as a house, but as a declaration. We are still here. Elise stood at the edge of the gravel drive, her hair pinned back with a pencil, blueprints tucked beneath her arm. She exhaled a long, steady breath, studying the angles of the porch roof, the symmetry of the windows, the way light spilled through the glass. She had designed every inch of it, measured, argued with contractors, fought for salvaged beams when the state offered cheap substitutes. "Our father built with heart," she told them, her jaw tight. "This house deserves nothing less." Now, looking at the completed structure, she allowed herself a rare smile. "You'd approve, Dad," she whispered. Rowan approached from the road, jacket draped over his shoulder, boots coated in dust. He had spent the last weeks not at the house but in county courthouses and committee rooms, fighting for the land rights their father had nearly died defending. In meeting after meeting, he stood taller than the lawyers and lobbyists, his voice sharp, his evidence ironclad. By the time the gavel fell, the Mason land was secured beyond contest. "You did it," Elise said, as he reached her side. "We all did." Rowan's eyes lingered on the house, softened for a moment. "No," he said. "This is yours. You gave us a home to return to. I just made sure no one could take it again." Across the yard, Nora knelt in a patch of soil freshly turned beside the porch steps. Her hands worked the earth with quiet patience, placing small roots into the ground. Lavender, rosemary, the start of a garden. She hummed under her breath, low and soothing, the same melody Liam half remembered from dreams. It was not just gardening, not just planting. For Nora, this was penance and prayer, each seed an apology to the family she'd thought lost, each blossom to be a promise that life would continue. Kaiser lay sprawled in the grass nearby, his ears twitching, his golden eyes always half alert. Liam sat beside him, cross-legged, carefully tracing letters in a school notebook, while resting against the shepherd's warm flank. His pencil moved slower than most boys his age, but his determination made up for it. Every few minutes, he'd pause to lean down and whisper something into Kaiser's ear, and the dog would thump his tail in approval. The school had tried to argue at first. A German shepherd in the classroom was too much, too distracting. But Wilson and the Attorney General had made the case clear. After everything Liam had survived, Kaiser was not just a dog. He was protector, therapy, guardian. Certified now as Liam's official support animal, Kaiser padded into the school halls each morning, vest polished, boy at his side, drawing glances that quickly turned to respect. For Liam, it was the first time in years he walked into a place without fear tightening his chest. With Kaiser, he belonged. That morning at the farmhouse, Liam dropped his pencil and stretched. "Mom?" he called to Nora. "Can we plant sunflowers too?" Nora glanced up, dirt smudged on her cheek, her expression tender. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll make a row right here, so they turn their faces with the sun, just like you." Elise pressed her lips together, holding back the swell of emotion. Rowan looked away, blinking hard. For so long, their family had been fractured by fire, hunted by corruption, drowned in silence. And yet here they stood. A garden beginning, shutters gleaming green, a boy's laughter carried on the wind. Kaiser rose suddenly, ears pricked, scanning the tree line. His body stiffened, but only for a moment. When no threat followed, he settled again, resting his head against Liam's leg. Still, the message was clear. Peace was fragile, but guarded, always guarded. Rowan stepped up onto the porch, resting his hand against the railing. "The state's already sending restitution funds," he said quietly. "Enough to rebuild the barn, restore the orchard. Families hail destroyed will get pieces of their lives back too. It's not everything, but it's a start." Nora dusted her hands and came to stand beside him. "Starts are all we ever had," she said softly. "And they're enough." Liam hugged Kaiser's neck, looking up at the house, then at his family. "It feels like Dad's here," he said. Elise knelt beside him, cupping his cheek. "He is. Every nail in that frame, every root in that soil. It's him. And it's us." The sun rose higher, washing the shutters in gold, warming the porch boards, stretching light across the land their father had fought for. For the first time in years, the Hart family stood not in ruins, not in flight, but in rebuilding. The past was still with them, scars that would never fully fade, but the house with green shutters stood as proof. They were more than survivors. They were home. The day stretched long and golden across the hills, the new farmhouse glowing against the horizon. By evening, the air cooled, heavy with the perfume of earth turned by Nora's garden and the distant hum of crickets rising from the fields. The family had gathered on the porch to watch the sunset burn its last light over Cedar Ridge. Liam leaned against the porch post, Kaiser sitting at his side like a sentry, tail curled neatly, eyes sharp. Elise rocked slowly in the old wooden chair they'd salvaged from the ruins, blueprints still scattered on her lap. Rowan stood at the railing, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the tree line that guarded the property's edge. As the last shaft of light slipped behind the ridge, Kaiser's ears twitched, his head lifted, body stiffening, a low hum of breath escaping his throat. Liam felt it before he heard it, the ripple of alertness that passed through the dog like an electric current. "Kaiser?" Liam whispered, resting his small hand on the shepherd's shoulder. The dog's muscles were taut beneath his fingers, coiled and quivering. Then Kaiser moved. With a sudden burst, he bounded down the steps, paws pounding the earth, a dark streak across the fading grass. "Kaiser!" Liam cried, half rising, but Rowan's hand came to rest on the boy's shoulder. "Wait. Let him go." The family followed with their eyes as Kaiser raced toward the tree line, stopping just short of the shadows. His body lowered, tail wagging with cautious respect. He barked once. Not a warning, not aggression, but a summons. From the forest, something stirred. Branches shifted. A shape emerged from the dusk, moving slow, deliberate, with the heavy dignity of age. Out of the shadows stepped a German shepherd, larger than Kaiser, but worn with years. His muzzle was streaked silver, his coat dulled by time, his eyes clouded yet steady. His gait carried the weight of many seasons, but his presence was unmistakable. Liam's breath caught. Who is that?" Nora pressed a hand to her lips, her eyes wide, shimmering with recognition. Elise stood slowly, the blueprint sheet slipping from her lap to the porch floor. Rowan's chest rose and fell with something caught between disbelief and awe. The old shepherd stopped at the edge of the clearing, lifting his head. His ears flicked once at Kaiser's bark, and then he stepped forward. Kaiser, in an uncharacteristic gesture, lowered himself into a bow, front paws extended, head dipped low, tail flicking in deference. It was not submission, but reverence. The aged shepherd approached, and the two dogs touched noses, Kaiser whimpering softly, as though greeting an elder long expected. Then the old shepherd's tail gave a slow wag, the silver muzzle brushing along Kaiser's ear. Nora's voice trembled as she whispered into the fading light. "Atlas." Elise's eyes filled with tears. "Father's dog. The name seemed to hang in the evening air, weighted with memory. Atlas. Michael Hart's loyal companion, the shepherd who had guarded the family before fire and corruption shattered it. He had vanished the night of the blaze, assumed dead with their parents. But here he was, impossibly alive, standing on the land he once protected. Liam clutched his scarf fragment tighter, his voice barely audible. He came home. Atlas lifted his head, eyes scanning the porch. He moved with slow grace, every step echoing years of distance. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, Kaiser flanked him, proud yet deferential, as if escorting royalty back to his throne. The family descended together, drawn into the moment as if by invisible thread. Nora crouched, extending a trembling hand. Atlas pressed his muzzle into her palm, and a sob broke from her chest, half grief, half wonder. "You never stopped guarding us," she whispered. Elise knelt too, her forehead touching the shepherd's worn head. "All this time?" Rowan remained standing, but his jaw worked, his eyes wet, as he looked away toward the horizon. "Father trusted him," he said hoarsely. "And he was right to." Liam moved last, stepping cautiously forward, Kaiser nudging him gently closer. The boy lowered to his knees, staring into the dog's aged eyes. "You're the one from my dreams," he breathed. "The one who pulled me from the fire." Atlas licked his cheek once, slow and deliberate, sealing the bond. Liam wrapped his arms around the old shepherd's neck, pressing into the coarse fur, tears sliding down his face. Kaiser circled them, tail swishing, giving a low woof as if to welcome the reunion. The porch light flicked on behind them, spilling warm glow over the gathering. Shadows stretched across the yard, but the presence of the two shepherds banished the sense of danger that had haunted the land. For the first time in decades, the guardians of the Hart family, past and present, stood together. Silence fell heavy and reverent. Crickets sang in the fields, the river murmured in the distance, and the night air thickened with the promise of something sacred. Survival passed from one protector to the next. Rowan broke the quiet with a whisper. "Bloodlines, not just of men, of loyalty." Elise nodded, her voice hushed. "Our father trusted the shepherds to carry the truth, and they did." Kaiser pressed against Atlas's side, the two dogs moving as one toward the porch. Liam walked between them, his small hands resting on both. His face glowed with a quiet certainty. As the family followed, Elise cast one last look at the forest. "He's come back to finish what he started," she said. Nora's eyes never left the two shepherds. "No," she murmured. "He came back to remind us we were never alone." The old farmhouse with green shutters loomed behind them, no longer just wood and stone. It was a sanctuary, and now, with Atlas and Kaiser guarding its doors, it was untouchable. The night settled, cool and still, and in the silvered light of the rising moon, the silhouette of two German shepherds stood side by side at the threshold, one young, one aged, bound by blood, by memory, by the weight of a promise that spanned generations. The Hart family, for the first time in decades, was whole. The porch boards creaked softly beneath the weight of the family gathered there. The farmhouse, freshly rebuilt with its green shutters and proud silhouette, glowed faintly in the lantern light. Beyond the railing, the fields breathed in the cool night air, and the forest stood like a silent sentinel under the stars. Rowan leaned against one of the posts, his broad shoulders outlined by the glow. Elise sat curled in the rocking chair, arms folded against the chill. Nora had pulled a shawl over her shoulders, her hands clasped in her lap. At their feet, Liam nestled between Kaiser and Atlas, the boy framed by both past and present guardians. The two shepherds sprawled like living bookends of loyalty. It had been a long road, scarred by fire, betrayal, flight, and blood. But now, in this quiet moment, there was stillness. The kind of stillness that only comes when every storm has finally spent its fury. Liam's head rested on Kaiser's side, his small hand buried in the shepherd's thick fur. Atlas lay close, his aged body weary but his eyes still burning with the calm of a sentinel who had never abandoned his post. The boy's breathing slowed, but he fought against sleep, unwilling to miss even a second of this rare peace. Rowan broke the silence first. I used to think survival was the measure of a family. If we lived through the fire, through hail, through all of it, then we had done enough. His voice was low, carrying into the night. But survival isn't the same as living. We needed this. He gestured toward the house, the porch, the boy between the dogs, to remember who we are. Nora's eyes shimmered, reflecting the lantern flame. "We're more than survivors," she said softly. "We are proof that love can be buried, beaten, starved, and still rise again." She reached down, brushing her fingers gently through Liam's hair. "He's the proof." Elise nodded, her gaze drifting toward Atlas. The old shepherd lifted his silvered head as if in acknowledgement. "And so is he," she added. "They both are, the past and the present, bound together." Kaiser's ears twitched, his eyes shifting between each family member, almost as though he understood the weight of their words. Atlas gave a slow exhale, resting his head back down on the porch planks, but his tail flicked once against the wood. Liam stirred, his young voice muffled against Kaiser's fur. "They never left us," he whispered. His eyes opened, gazing first at Atlas, then at Kaiser. "They carried the truth. They carried us." A hush fell again, heavier now, touched with reverence. In the distance, an owl called, its cry echoing over the trees. Rowan straightened, his jaw firm, but there was a softness in his expression that had been absent for decades. "Father trusted the shepherds," he said. "He knew they'd guard what we couldn't, when men failed, when systems failed, and he was right." "Some bonds—" His voice cracked, but he continued. "Some bonds outlast fire, betrayal, even time itself." Elise closed her eyes, the words settling deep. "Yes," she whispered. "Because loyalty isn't taught. It's lived. It's bled for. And once it's forged, nothing can burn it away." Nora reached across the small table, her hand covering Elise's, then Rowan's. A silent unity, an unspoken vow that what had been broken would remain whole from now on. Liam sat up then, rubbing his eyes, his voice small but steady. "Can we stay here forever?" Nora's throat tightened as she kissed the top of his head. "Yes, sweetheart. This is home. No one can take it from us again." Kaiser lifted his head and pressed his nose into Liam's hand, as if sealing the promise. Atlas shifted closer, resting his head against the boy's knee. Liam smiled faintly, tears clinging to his lashes. "Then we'll never be alone again." The lantern flickered, and for a moment the shadows on the porch seemed to stretch and bend, merging into one shape that was more than family, more than blood. It was history, sacrifice, love, and loyalty bound together. Rowan lifted his gaze to the stars above, his voice firm, resolute. "We carry them all with us. Father, Mother, Jack, everyone who gave pieces of themselves so we could stand here tonight. We owe them more than survival. We owe them lives worth living." The night deepened, wrapping around the farmhouse, but the porch was warm, safe, eternal. Elise leaned back in her chair, her eyes closing briefly. "Let tomorrow come," she murmured. "Tonight we have everything we need." Nora pressed Liam closer, her arms around him, Kaiser's steady weight pressed against them both. Atlas, weary but unyielding, lifted his head one last time toward the forest as though keeping watch. And in that stillness, under the starlit sky, the truth became clear. Some bonds, once forged, outlast fire, betrayal, even time itself. The family sat together until the lantern burned low, until the night folded around them. And when sleep finally claimed them, they slept not as fugitives, not as orphans, not as the hunted, but as a family made whole again, guarded by loyalty, anchored by love. Forever. Sometimes stories like this remind us that German shepherds, and really all dogs, are more than companions. They carry our secrets, guard our homes, and often love us in ways deeper than words. Their loyalty can outlast storms, betrayals, even time itself. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt they understood you, you know the bond I'm talking about. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's a kind of grace. For anyone who wants to nurture that connection even more, I came across a resource that feels thoughtful and gentle, not salesy. Just a guide to understanding your dog better and building trust day by day. I'll leave the link below if you'd like to explore it, but only if it feels right for you. At the end of the day, what matters most is showing up for our dogs the way they've always shown up for us. If this story touched you, maybe take a moment tonight to give your dog an extra scratch behind the ears or a longer hug. Sometimes, that's all the reminder we need.